They turned their back on me for choosing art over the family business. Years later, my multi-million-dollar success made them come crawling back, begging me to save them with $850,000 before they lost everything. When I was 18, my parents kicked me out of the house. The reason? I chose to study art instead of joining the family business. My father owned 3 car dealerships and had always assumed I would take over someday. It was his recurring talking point. The day my acceptance letter from Parsons arrived, I showed it to him, expecting his pride. Instead, my father tore it to pieces in front of me. "No son of mine is going to waste his life drawing," he snapped, without even looking me in the eye. My mother, as always, remained seated, hands clasped, silent. When I announced I was going anyway, my father threw my travel backpack at me and warned that if I crossed that door, I wouldn't be welcome back. I had about $2,700 saved from summer jobs, a sum I naively believed would last forever. It didn't. The first year was brutal. I shared a tiny, closet-sized room with 2 other guys, worked nights at a 24-hour diner, and barely slept. Sometimes I'd call home just to hear my mother's voice, but she'd whisper that my father was watching and hang up. Eventually, I stopped trying. By my 3rd year, I had started selling designs online. Nothing flashy, just simple logos and websites, but it allowed me to eat more than ramen, which was a triumph. I graduated with honors, but there was no one in the audience for me. I convinced myself I didn't care. 5 years after my forced departure, my little side project had transformed into a design agency with 15 employees and clients in 3 countries. I bought my first apartment in Brooklyn, had a fancy car, designer clothes, everything my father would measure success by. But he was unaware, because to them, I had ceased to exist years ago. Then, last year, my younger sister, Emma, found me through Instagram. She was in college and had secretly been following my footsteps. We met for coffee, both bundles of nerves. She showed me pictures of our parents, both looking older than I remembered. "They saw your company in Business Insider," she told me. "Dad went completely white when he realized it was you." Apparently, my agency had been highlighted for our work with a major tech company. The article mentioned our revenue, now 7 figures, and showed pictures of me in our sleek Manhattan office. Emma commented that my father had been carrying the magazine clipping in his wallet. They wanted to re-establish contact. 3 days later, I received a text message from a number I had deleted but still remembered by heart. My father asked if we could meet. Just like that, after 7 years of silence, with no apology or acknowledgement of what he had done. He just wanted to catch up, now that I had prospered. I agreed to meet them at a restaurant near my office. When I walked in, my mother burst into tears. My father stood up, hand outstretched, as if we were business partners. I didn't shake it. "We're so proud of what you've achieved," he said, as if he had been supporting me all along. Then came the real reason for the meeting. Their dealerships were in trouble. Online car sales had shattered their business model, and they needed capital to modernize the family company. When I asked how much, the figure made me laugh. $850,000, almost exactly what my first year of art school had cost, the education they refused to back. "We're family," my father said, as if that explained everything. Family helps each other. I looked at him, at my mother, who still hadn't said a word, and realized I felt nothing. The pain had faded, but so had any connection. "I'm sorry," I said, standing up, "but you made it very clear I'm not family." My father's face then changed, from genial to his familiar expression. That cold look I remembered from the night he kicked me out. "You ungrateful little," he began, but I cut him off. "I built everything I have while you pretended I didn't exist. The only reason you're sitting here is because I now have something you want." I left some money for my untouched meal and walked out. My phone exploded with text messages, first furious, then pleading. They even showed up in my office the next day, causing a commotion until security removed them. What they didn't know was that I had already set up a college fund for Emma. She shouldn't have to choose between family and her dreams, like I did. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right decision. Not about the money, they had no right to that, but about closing the door forever. Then I remember all the birthdays, holidays, and accomplishments they missed. Not because they couldn't be there, but because they chose not to be. Emma called me the night after my parents were escorted out of my office building. She was crying, something I hadn't heard since we were kids. "Dad's furious," she sobbed. "He's saying horrible things about you." I wasn't surprised. That was always his way. When he didn't get what he wanted, everyone else became the villain in his story. I asked Emma if she was okay, and there was a long pause. "They don't know I warned you they were coming," she finally admitted. "If they find out I've been talking to you all this time." I understood immediately. Emma was still financially dependent on them. Living at home during college breaks, she couldn't risk being disinherited like I had been. The difference was, I already had my art school acceptance letter and scholarship secured. Emma was still halfway through her degree. "Don't worry," I told her. "As far as they know, I found you, not the other way around." The next morning, my assistant notified me that my mother was in the lobby. Only my mother, no father. That was unusual enough for me to agree to see her. She looked smaller somehow, clutching her purse as if it could protect her from any reaction I might have. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," she said, still standing, even though I gestured to the chair in front of my desk. He wouldn't approve. 7 years, and she still couldn't make a move without his approval. Some things never change. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. She fumbled in her purse and pulled out a small box. "I saved this for you. I always believed you'd come back someday." Inside was my grandfather's watch. He had been an artist too, a fact my father had conveniently omitted from family history. Grandpa had given me the watch when I was 16, telling me to follow my passion no matter what. When I was kicked out, I had accidentally left it behind in the chaos. "Your father wanted to sell it," she said quietly. But I hid it. It was the first time I realized she might have been quietly rebelling in her own way. Too late. Too little. But still something. "Why did you never call me back?" I asked. All those times I tried to reach out. Her eyes filled with tears. "I was afraid. Not just of your father, but of hearing how much you were hurting. Knowing it was partly my fault for not standing up for you." She finally sat down, seemingly exhausted by the small act of defiance. "The money isn't just for the dealerships," she confessed. "Your father has made some bad investments. We're going to lose the house. He's too proud to admit it." I felt a flicker of pity, but quickly pushed it away. How many nights had I slept on friends' couches or in the back room of the diner during my first years in New York? Where was their concern then? I built my business from nothing. I told her. Dad can do the same if he needs to. She nodded, not arguing. "I understand. I just wanted you to know I saved something of yours all this time, and I'm sorry I wasn't stronger." As she stood to leave, she added, "Emma's been talking about transferring to a school in New York. Your father's against it, but I think she should be close to her brother." 2 days later, I received formal documentation from my father's lawyer requesting an investment in the family business. The proposed terms were ridiculous. I would get a 10% stake in a failing business for nearly $1 million. There was a handwritten note attached. "Blood is thicker than water. Don't forget where you come from." I had my own lawyer respond with a simple message. "I remember exactly where I come from." That's why my answer is no. What I didn't expect was the campaign that followed. My father started calling my clients, telling them stories about how I had abandoned my family. He even contacted my employees, suggesting I was untrustworthy. Most people saw right through it, but it was damaging nonetheless. The last straw was when he showed up at my apartment building, drunk, shouting in the lobby that I was an ungrateful bastard. The doorman called the police, and I had to decide whether to press charges against my own father. I didn't, but I did get a restraining order. When the court papers were served, my mother called, crying. "He's not a bad man," she insisted. "He's just desperate and proud." "Those aren't excuses," I told her. "They're the reason I had to leave in the first place." 3 months passed with no contact. I immersed myself in work, expanding the agency, and helping Emma discreetly transfer to NYU. She moved into my guest room temporarily, though we both knew it would likely be permanent. She was the only family I needed. Then, one afternoon, my assistant forwarded me an email from my father's dealership. It was a job offer for a new general manager. Below it was a message. "The position is vacant because I'm retiring. I'm not asking for anything. I just thought you should know." I almost deleted it, but something prompted me to call the dealership the next day. Not my father directly, but his longtime secretary, Marion, who had always given me sweets when I visited as a kid. "Oh, honey," she said when she realized who was calling. "Haven't you heard? My father had suffered a mild stroke 2 weeks prior. He was recovering, but he had been advised to retire from the business. The dealerships were being sold to a national chain. The family home was on the market, and my parents were moving to a smaller apartment. He's too proud to call you," Marion said. "But he keeps that magazine with your picture in his hospital room." I didn't know what to feel. Part of me thought it was just another manipulation tactic. Another part remembered the father who taught me to ride a bike and cheered me on at my Little League games, before his dreams for me overshadowed who I really was. I sent flowers to the hospital but didn't visit. Instead, I had my lawyer draft the documents for a trust fund to help with my parents' medical expenses. Not a direct gift to them, but a separate account they could access only for healthcare. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I couldn't just do nothing either. A week later, Emma returned from visiting them with a shaky, handwritten letter, clearly penned during my father's recovery. "I was wrong," it began simply. "Not just about your art, but about what makes a man successful. It took losing everything to see that you built something real, something better than I achieved in twice the time." There was no request for money, no excuses, just an acknowledgement I never thought I'd hear. I drove to their new apartment the following Sunday. It was small, nothing like the spacious house I had grown up in. My mother opened the door and froze in shock before hugging me desperately. My father was sitting in a recliner, looking frail but still imposing somehow. When he saw me, he struggled to stand. "No," I said. "I won't be staying long." We talked awkwardly about unimportant things at first. The weather, Emma's classes, my recent trip to Japan for a client. Then, finally, he cleared his throat. I've had a lot of time to think, he said, about what kind of legacy I'm leaving. Not the business, that's gone, but what my children will remember about me. He looked me in the eye. Really looked at me. Perhaps for the first time since I was a teenager. I was raised to believe a man's worth was in his work in providing. Art wasn't work to me. I couldn't understand how my son could throw away something safe for something so risky. But you proved me wrong in every possible way. He gestured around the modest apartment. I followed all the rules, did everything right, and ended up here. You followed your passion and built an empire. That magazine said your agency is worth 8 figures now. I nodded. We had recently been valued for a potential merger at $12 million, though I had no intention of selling. I'm not here to ask for money, he continued. I wouldn't accept it even if you offered. My pride has taken enough hits. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what you've accomplished. And I was wrong to stand in your way. It wasn't a tearful reconciliation. There was too much history for that. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall we had built between us. I stayed for dinner. My mother had made my favorite childhood meal, though I hadn't tasted it in years. We talked about Emma's future, about my company, even a little about my art, which my father clearly still didn't fully grasp but was trying to appreciate. As I left, he handed me a small, worn leather book. Your grandfather's sketchbook, he said. I should have given it to you years ago. Inside were drawings my grandfather had made. Landscapes, portraits, designs for furniture he had built. Art that had been hidden because it didn't fit my father's narrative of our family. There's more of him and you than there is of me, my father said. Maybe that's not such a bad thing after all. I didn't forgive him that day. True forgiveness would take time, if it ever came. But I did begin to understand him better. How his own father had pushed him into the car business. How fear of failure had driven his entire life. How seeing me succeed by breaking all his rules had shattered his worldview. Over the next year, we established a cautious relationship. Monthly dinners, occasional phone calls. My mother began volunteering at an art therapy program for children, her way of making amends, I suppose. My father joined a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs, telling them all the things he wished he had known, including the importance of supporting their children's dreams, even when they didn't understand them. Emma graduated and came to work for my agency, bringing a business sense I sometimes lacked. She was the bridge between my creative world and our parents' practical world, translating between us when old tensions resurfaced. The trust fund I had set up for their medical care remained largely unused. My father insisted on Medicare and supplemental insurance, wanting to maintain what independence he could. Save it for when we're truly old and difficult, he joked once, the first humor I had heard from him in years. Last month, I opened our newest office in Chicago, not far from where I grew up. At the launch party, I saw my parents in the crowd, my father leaning on a cane but standing tall, watching with something that looked like pride as I gave my speech. Afterward, he shook my hand formally and then gave me an unexpected hug. You did good, son, he said, his voice husky. You did better than good. It wasn't everything. It couldn't erase those 7 years of silence, the struggle, the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't enough for them to love. But it was something, an acknowledgement that we all have a right to chart our own course, to define success on our own terms. Sometimes wealth isn't measured in dollars. Sometimes it's found in the freedom to be who you truly are, in creating something meaningful from nothing, in finding the strength to open a door you once swore would remain closed forever. My agency now has a scholarship program for art students whose families don't support their dreams. The first recipient is a talented kid from my hometown, whose father, a car dealer, believes art is a waste of time. Each check is personally signed by my father. People ask if I've forgiven my parents. The truth is more complicated. I've accepted that they did the best they could with the limited understanding they had. I've acknowledged that perhaps I wouldn't be where I am today without that painful push out of the nest. And I've come to believe that family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's a choice we make every day to show up, to try again, to see each other for who we truly are. The greatest wealth I've found isn't in my bank account. It's in breaking the cycle, in creating space for everyone to follow their own path without fear of rejection. My father lost everything trying to maintain control. I gained everything by letting it go. Today, we are not the family we were. We are something different, something rebuilt from the ground up with stronger foundations and room for everyone to stand in their truth. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And perhaps that's all any family can hope for.